So, welcome today again to all of you who are joining us from different parts of the world. Good morning, good afternoon. I repeat, my name is Julia Feldin. I am migration project lead at the Berlin Governance Platform, and I am your host today. Our today's webinar will focus on giving you a very detailed overview on our data-driven matching approach that we developed over the past 2 years with our pilot Rematch. The initial idea of Rematch was developed with the idea to propose and improve the EU relocation mechanism and so enhance EU solidarity. Our aim was to go away from the more random distribution decisions that we have in place right now and instead match refugees with cities based on their real-time needs, on newcomers' preferences, and on cities' capacities. And by doing so, really use already scarce resources of cities, but also give an active voice to refugees and cities. From the beginning, we developed our process of Rematch with the idea that it has to be scalable, and also with the idea that it can be implemented in similar settings or contexts, so like resettlement or other humanitarian pathways. And after 2 years of successfully piloting Rematch, we summarize our key learnings and recommendation in a very freshly published implementation guide. We want to present it to you today. We wrote the implementation guide with the idea to be a handbook for practitioners, but as well as advocates that want to or that are interested in implementing a similar matching in programs, resettlement programs, relocation programs, humanitarian pathways, or also the more upcoming complementary pathways. So it's actually a hand-on guide that gives you a very structured overview of what we did, the single steps that are necessary to implement a successful matching process, and also gives you very detailed recommendations what to do and what to think about when you consider implementing such a matching process. One more remark on wording, which I think it's important in implementation guide, but also today we'll be using the collective term refugee, but we use it as a more, let's say, collective term encompassing all kind of displaced people, so as including asylum seekers, people with recognized international protection, or generally people seeking protection. So it's now my great pleasure also to introduce you to my fantastic team. I'm joined today by my co-project lead, Katja Wagner, by our migration policy officer, Lea Rau, our assistant, Kyla Gregolite, which is also a bit our tech support today in case you have any challenge, and Elisa Ertl, our project coordinator. And I'm also very delighted to be joined by our partner organization, Parity, especially by Laura Celeste, which will, together with Elisa, drive you through our key point of our implementation guide in a bit. Before I hand over the word to them, I also want to give a warm welcome to our German partner cities. Some of them are joining us here today. Our project success would not have been possible without their engagement, and a big thanks to them. I also see a representative of our partner organizations in Poland, Right to Protections and Asylum Lab. Also a very warm welcome. Thank you for being here. So I'm now ready to hand over the word to you, Elisa and Laura, and I hope to, I wish you all a very insightful and inspiring webinar.
Thank you, Julia. Let me get the presentation started again. I think you should see it now in presentation mode. Yeah, okay, I see some nods. Thank you so much, Julia, for the introduction. I'm super excited that I get to present some of our learnings and takeaways of the last 2 years, some very eventful 2 years. And I think we learned as much as people can learn in 2 years. And we are so happy to be handing over some of our learnings to people who might want to implement something like this. We have seen some big interest over the last 2 years, and we thought a handbook would be a great addition to the publication landscape and our other publications. And I want to get started by just walking you through a little bit of our key achievements of the last 2 years, because I'm sure some of you haven't listened to us yet or haven't looked at any of our publications yet, just to give an overview. So the last 2 years, we successfully matched with an algorithm and relocated 137 people from Poland and Ukraine to German cities. These 137 people were comprised of 78 adults and 59 children, as you can see on the slide, and we relocated them to 8 German cities. Those 8 German cities you can see on the map of Germany were located or are located far north to the very far south of Germany and are very different in sizes and offers and also needs. So our smallest town is 45,000 inhabitants large, and the biggest city is 1.5 million inhabitants strong, which means, of course, challenges and also big learnings in that regard, which, of course, we are happy to answer. If anyone is interested, please ask a question later on this. Then maybe some more soft achievements, which I mean by our evaluation results. So we have asked participants, so refugees, and also our cities, a variety of questions over the last 2 years. But in total, we can say that we see a high satisfaction from both sides, city and refugee participant side. From the refugee side, we were also able to record a very early sense of belonging. So people feel safe and happy in their new cities in Germany, and also voice a very strong recommendation for the matching relocation model, as you can see on the graph on the right-hand side. Even people who were maybe not satisfied with some parts of the matching or the city or whatever it might be, they still voiced a very strong recommendation for the matching relocation model overall. We recorded a very high retention rate. So 100% of the people are still in the same state that they were relocated to, and around 90% are still in the city that we matched them to 1 year later, which of course is a very large number. And we are super happy about this, because this proves that people feel that they found a good place for them, and we help them do that. On the municipal side, we have heard that the cities feel like our approach helped them collaborate better. Of course, this was necessary to facilitate the matching, so to gather the data and to make it possible to admit those people into the regular systems at the municipal level. It was necessary for different departments and government bodies or local government bodies to collaborate to make this possible. And this is a very welcome effect of our approach. Additionally, also, this is something that we hope for, and we also proved with our evaluation, is that cities were better able to plan ahead and efficiently allocate resources participating in a matching like this. By this, I mean that we have heard back from cities that they were actually able to start the process of helping people that might need specific help earlier and quicker, and also more targeted. For example, if someone needs specified medical help or disability accessible housing, stuff like this could be implemented much earlier and quicker. But also generally, being able to register people ahead of time before they arrive, because you are aware of what they need and who they are, empowered cities to do that. And lastly, I want to highlight that this was an effect that we didn't fully anticipate, but it is one of our biggest findings, in my opinion, and that we recorded a very positive difference in refugee expectations upon arrival. And this we heard from both sides. So on the one hand, refugees have told us that they feel prepared for the new environments and the new cities, and that they know what to expect because we told them so. More on that later. but also from the city side, especially smaller towns have let us know that they feel like people are better prepared and knew what to expect and maybe what not to expect and can settle in more seamlessly. So finally, I would like to walk you through our implementation guide. So if you listened to this just now and thought, oh, this is interesting, I really welcome you to read our evaluation reports, our 6-month and soon to be published 12-month reports where we lay out all of the evaluation results. But in general, like Julia said in the beginning, we have, of course, an overarching toolkit of learnings of what we think is necessary to implement it the way we did, or maybe even things that we haven't done yet, but we think is necessary to make it even better. So for this reason, we have divvied up our learnings into, or also our approach into steps. And these you can see here on our little road that you can also find in our publication. And these 6 steps are the ones that we think are necessary to go through to achieve the results that we did. First, the co-design participatory approach, then the data collection, both on city side and on refugee side, then of course the matching, then the delivery of results to both sides and the subsequent relocation or move of any kind to the cities, and then the developmental evaluation. We would like to walk you through these steps now, step by step. And the first few I will cover, and then my colleague Laura will take over. First, the co-design. We think that it is absolutely necessary to approach designing an algorithm or even a technology and aided approach like this in a participatory manner to make sure that you're serving the groups that you want to serve, both on city and refugee side, adequately and according to what they actually need and want. Of course, also trying to not build bias into the system that you with your own bias and assumptions. So we did that by conducting focus groups and workshops with refugees and cities alike. And in these workshops and focus groups in the beginning or the end of 2022 and at the beginning of 2023, we selected match criteria. And I'm sure some of the city representatives who are here and who were present at these meetings remember that we really approached it bottom up. So we didn't come in with match criteria and said, we want to do this, what do you think? But more or less asked, what do you think good matching criteria would be? What do you think that the data that you can provide, especially on city side, is even possible? Like, what can we use to make a matching work? And also we consulted especially refugees on wordings of surveys and communication materials to make sure that we are approaching this from a do no harm perspective. Throughout the 2 years, we sought iterative feedback, and this is something that I want to stress that is highly important, especially in a pilot setting, to allow for changes to the algorithm, to use an adaptive algorithm that allows for changes, and to listen to what people say. So concretely, I can say we, for example, at some point scrapped something, some matching criteria, or weighted them differently after the first year, or said that maybe we need to add some wording to the survey to make it clearer. These kinds of things are super important. And then lastly, and this is the heart and soul of the whole thing, and I will go more into detail in I think 2 slides, but that refugees can indicate their preferences and what they want from a new city, and cities can indicate what capacities they have, or maybe where they are at their limit, or where they maybe need something. This is the key of the co-design, because by them being able to indicate this maximizes the participatory element, and they can tailor the settlement decision that affects them to the maximum. I want to highlight the 2 quotes on the side. I won't read them out loud, but it's a quote from the very first focus group of refugees, with refugees, and then a quote from one of our partner cities, Kiel, and they both highlighted that the participatory element they find very important, and they could feel that we are trying to do this. And I think this is something that I want to highly recommend. to make a tool actually work. Sorry, now my Zoom does not want to, there you go. Now I want to dive into the data collection on the city side. I'm going to try to keep it brief. If you want more details on this, you're invited to read our reports or ask questions afterwards. I know that I'm going to rush through this now. Sorry. So city data was collected by a digital capacity service, which means that the cities themselves filled out a digital survey. And here we want to recommend close and trusted collaboration and regular communication during the data entry period. Of course, this is important during a pilot setting and might not be necessary later in a scale setting, but this is highly important to make sure that the survey is filled out in the way that you want it to be filled out, or also maybe learn that you need to rephrase your questions. The data was manually reviewed by us. This was necessary to ensure completeness or get rid of inconsistencies, also in a scale setting. This could look differently. You can find some recommendations on this later in the presentation today, but also in the report. But what I'm getting at is that this could be automated. And this is something that we would really like to try out in the future. As per what kind of data we collected, you can see on the right-hand side a table that you can also find in our publication with some explanations. But in general, we collect static data and dynamic data. So the static data might be on a city, in a city, where the city is located, how many inhabitants the city has, or how many universities, what kind of universities, these kinds of things that are likely not to change. But then, of course, very important to the matching are the dynamic data, and this is capacities and needs. For example, where does the city need workers, in which fields? Or where does the city have training opportunities available? Where does the city see the availability for childcare or private, the accessibility of private housing? How long does that take? And of course, very important for communal housing or refugee housing facilities, what are the minimum maximum capacities of the certain rooms that are free right now? So you don't send families that are too big or too small for the rooms that exist. Also important, are these accommodations disability accessible? Are they child friendly? These kinds of things that are changing by the minute in every city are, of course, super important to make matching actually helpful to the city. Then on the refugee side, we conducted interviews. So one personal interview per family, digitally or in person, both worked very well. And in these interviews, we encourage, or actually I want to underline it triple, that honest and transparent communication here is extremely important, as per what I said earlier about the expectation management, that if you want people to fill out these surveys in a way that actually reflects what they want and need, they need to understand what the entered answers or replies mean, what the effects of these are, and you need to explain this. This could be in speaking orally, or you can also implement it into the survey, explaining what these specific answers mean. And then lastly, I want to say that also this here in a scale setting could be streamlined into existing procedures. By this, I mean, you don't specifically need to have an interview where you ask all of the questions and get all of the data that I'm about to explain to you, but you could streamline it into existing systems and maybe then focus in an interview setting on only the preferences. So what do I mean by preferences? Like I said, the data that could be streamlined is more static. So this is the employment or education background or the household composition, the language skills, these kinds of things that are not changing. But then the participant preferences are the dynamic factor, just like on the city side, where people can indicate what they actually want from a new city, because we cannot assume that people with similar backgrounds want the same things. This is, of course, absolutely not the case. And hence, if you ask people individually, they will give you very different answers. And maybe just as a disclaimer, before I read this, what I mean by preference ranking is that for each of the specific preferences, people can indicate how important they are to them specifically. So one concrete example, they can indicate on a scale. In our approach, you can, of course, vary this from 1 to 5, how important is it to them that the city has a university in their specific field? Or how important is it to them to find housing, private housing, rapidly? How important is it to them to have a specific city size that they indicate? How important is it that this city has the presence of a specific diaspora community or religious organization? Or how important is it to be close to friends and family that they have indicated? So these kinds of things are what we mean by preferences. Now I would like to give over or hand over to my colleague Laura, who is from our partner organization, Parity in Canada, who is more of an expert on the algorithm side. So she can explain to you how these preferences and capacities are translated into the actual matching.
Yeah, so thank you, Lisa. So I'll speak a bit about the matching. So Parity is the matching and evaluation partner for Rematch. And I'll walk you through the steps of what the algorithm does, which is also laid out in more detail in our report. So the algorithm makes sure to optimize the welfare by assigning the best possible matches across the whole cohort. So it looks at all possible people, all possible preferences, and then runs the matches to see the best possible outcomes. So this happens in a few steps. So first, as Elisa was saying, we have the data intake. So the data surveys where we understand the refugees' preferences, but also any characteristics or backgrounds, and what we call exclusion criteria. So the exclusion criteria would be, for example, something that is not adjustable. So, for example, if a mother with a child who requires a wheelchair, the algorithm would exclude any city accommodation that is not wheelchair accessible, so that match would never be suggested as a possibility. So across the different characteristics and the different needs of participants, those exclusion criteria are taken into consideration above all else. So the second step is that the algorithm looks at the quality of the feasible pairings to make sure that the match scores are the best across the whole cohort. So that's those preference scores from 1 to 5 that everyone ranked. These are taken into consideration across all of the participants, and the algorithm runs all the possible combinations to find the highest score across all of the participants. So this, for example, a cohort of 50 cases means the algorithm will calculate several million possible combinations. And then after that's all calculated, we have the list of the best possible outcomes across the whole cohort. And this is to maximize the welfare and the outcomes for all parties across all of the possible options. So after the algorithm runs this, we share the matches with our partners, who then confirm that there's a human element that reviews the matches to confirm that these are indeed the best matches. And after the matches are made, we focus on the results sharing and the relocation. So the results are then provided to the participants. And this includes providing city information and a detailed rationale of the matching. So this is quite important so that participants are empowered, so they understand why they were matched to the city they were matched. So for example, in that top image, we show the participant, you ranked having a language class as the 1 out of 5, you ranked it a 5. It's the highest importance to you. And you were matched to a city that has the language classes that you need, and they're available in a timely manner. So this information is provided to the newcomers and the refugees, and they have the ability to accept or to reject or confirm this match. Once we have all those confirmation, then we send the information packages to the cities. So this includes participants' information, any supporting documents, and as well as rationale for the cities, so they know who is coming to them and what their expectations are of the city. In addition, then the newcomers are provided very detailed arrival guides so that they're prepared to understand the local circumstances, what the cities are like. And so again, this is all working to make sure everyone's expectations are met and they understand what happens after the match is made. And then lastly, I'll focus on the key recommendations we have, as particularly with a pilot project, but any sort of project that uses more of a dynamic approach is to conduct a continuous developmental evaluation. And so a developmental evaluation means that you're evaluating the project in real time, which is allowing for you to use that data to feed back into the process to make improvements as you go. So for example, Elisa mentioned a few times as we were implementing the surveys, or we would learn things from participants, we would take that information back into the process and improve the survey wording, for example. In terms of evaluation, to kind of get at these key learnings, we focused on a few different aspects. So the refugee participants were given a baseline survey, which collected their preferences as well as other information. Then we followed up with them 1 month after relocation, 6 months, and 12 months to measure things such as satisfaction and other integration outcomes to track them over time. So those evaluation pieces are more specific to our evaluation publications. But we also focused on we conducted focus groups and interviews to learn more of that detailed feedback. And in addition, we conducted workshops and interviews with cities to really understand things from both sides. And so for an example here, we have these graphs of some of the survey results from phase 1 and phase 2, which is really showing that we took the learnings from phase 1, from the feedback from surveys and focus groups from refugees, and we found that actually they were seeking a little bit more information, especially early on before they signed up, as things were getting moving, to better understand what all the matches meant and just general information about the program, so that we could see by phase 2 we had improved their satisfaction on all of these items, as just an example of what this developmental evaluation can look like. You implementing changes as you go so that you can get the best outcomes for everyone involved. And then lastly, we'll speak a little bit more about scaling. So as we mentioned, this is a pilot project, but we already have big ideas for how we can scale and what this can look like. So one big piece that we recommend, and we're very eager to implement, is this sort of automation of processes around a digital platform. So being able to use a digital platform for both data intake and sharing of secure data would be a great asset to a sort of a larger project, and kind of facilitate some of those pieces we mentioned. For example, sharing data, but also using things like AI to create these match rationales, so that you save on some personnel time from creating that, and you can focus your time on other pieces. You can also use these automations to sort of validate or clean data, or pull data directly from different databases to kind of eliminate any manual steps that are involved there.
Great, thank you, Laura. I'm going to take over for a brief second before I give the stage back to Julia, and that is that, of course, we are very aware that we so far have only implemented this approach with Ukrainian participants, and that preferences or needs look very different when you look at different refugee populations or demographics. And for that reason, we want to highlight that this would need some additional research, namely focus groups or like extended consultations of affected populations that you want to apply this to see what the best matching criteria would be. So I'm not encouraging you to just take over the ones that we mention in our reports and just apply it to your approach. It's really important that you put some time in to see what you actually need to use as matching criteria for the people that you are serving, also the cities or other circumstances you are trying to match to. This could, for example, be different migration pathways. So for example, if you want to use a matching algorithm for your community sponsorship programs, I know that we have some participants from this area today that I want to highlight that this is absolutely possible, but you would, of course, need to adapt a little bit. And then also, like Laura already mentioned, using emerging technology to aid this approach, of course, would need some research in terms of how to avoid bias, how to avoid certain things, and to make sure that this is an actual human rights-based approach and true to our participatory and also transparent credo, if you will. Thank you so much for listening. And also, I really encourage you to read it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Laura directly if it's about anything that we have said or you're sure that we have the answer to. But also, you can see our general email address if you want to, for example, collaborate or just get a one-on-one meeting to ask some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Laura, for your very clear presentation and for driving us through this, our, let's say, 6 steps of our rematch approach and what you might have to consider if you want to implement a similar matching process. I think maybe it's worth to mention also that we are working actually on also the German version of the implementation guide, as we have many people joining from Germany today, that will be probably published on our website in January. So far we have the English version.